Hello everybody, this is Bradley from RaceBeacon and it's Race Week. This weekend will not only mark the return of Sebastian Vettel, but also the return of the Australian Grand Prix, which was the first event to be cancelled due to the cough back in 2019. Now, just a few moments ago really, and probably only an hour or so ago once I upload this, Formula 1 changed on their website the track map for the Australian Grand Prix. So this is a track map that we had in 2019. You can see this is a track that you all know and, depending on who you ask, maybe love. But we've known for a long time, even before the pandemic, that there were going to be changes to the track. And now we finally have them. So let's just go over some of the key changes. The biggest one, obviously, is 4 DRS zones, but I will get onto that in just one moment. Through most of the first sector, it actually remains fairly unchanged. There's not a massive difference. The biggest differences here are basically the track being widened on exit and, slightly nicer curves in places as well. This is just simply to make it easier to follow. You can run a little bit wider. It's not going to make too much of a difference. It should fit in with the new regulations incredibly well. And yeah, the changes to Sector 1 are actually pretty minor compared to what we see on the rest of the track. So as we approach up to turn 9 and 10, this is the first major difference on the track. You can see, this is 2019, you can see obviously we've got about a 90-degree right-hander, which then becomes that left-hander. It's a little bit of a chicane. That has now become a complete straight almost, and we're going to have DRS through most of the way into the run-up to turns 9 and 10, which is that fast left and then right-hander, where we're going to see, especially with DRS on entry and also exit, we're going to be some really high speeds here. I would not be surprised if we do see a crash or two. It's definitely one that the people who play the Formula 1 games will have struggled on. But really, as a whole, the nature of the track hasn't changed too much in the build-up to that, or it's just a little bit more curved. It has changed a little bit, but the real changes of the track this year is through most of the corners, it's all been widened, but also it's just going to flow a little bit better. There's less slow, clunky corners, which is especially the case on this year's car. This happens when the cars lose the downforce generated by ground effect, basically, when they're going through slow corners. So when we do get to a track this year like Monaco, these cars are going to handle like an absolute bit. So after we've exited turn 9 and 10, there we go, as you can see, that used to be a DRS zone anyway. So the main difference is actually on the approach. So after turns 9 and 10 there, which have not moved, that's just not a corner anymore. Although I would argue that probably turn 9 should be here, especially considering what some of the corners we see elsewhere on the calendar are. But that's not a debate to be had right now. So we've got a DRS zone all the way on the entry, which is something we've never actually seen before. And truth be told, I'm not entirely sure why we didn't have a DRS zone here before. This was just a detection zone and then we got it on the exit. So I think the biggest issue in the past was cars not braking on entry, and obviously the DRS won't close and you cannot go through this corner with DRS open. That would not end well. The nature of turns 11, 12 and 13 have changed a little bit. It's nothing too major. Again, it's slightly wider track, slightly more accommodating to a little bit of understeer. As no real difference there at all. Again, it's just allowing the track to flow a little bit better. I mean, from the track map, there's barely any difference at all. I think it's pretty much the same. And then, of course, heading into the final 2 corners of the lap, that's where you can gain so much time. And this is probably the heaviest braking zone on the track now. You've got about a 110-degree left-hander or so. And yeah, that is probably going to be one of the heaviest braking zones on the track, especially considering how much speed can probably be taken on a slightly wider turn 11 and 12 this year compared to what we saw with turn 13 and 14 in 2019. But for me, the biggest thing here is the fact that we have 4 DRS zones. This is something I've wanted to see on a few tracks, especially the more recent ones that are coming out, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get something like it in Las Vegas or Miami, something crazy like that. But what I find really interesting, of course, we've only got 2 DRS detection zones. And now this isn't something I've actually had the chance to rant about on stream, like most other topics in Formula 1 actually. But I really dislike when we have double DRS zones with only 1 detection point. For me, we need a detection zone probably about where the speed trap is, to be brutally honest. If not, maybe at about turn 1. Or just before, I don't know. For me, I really don't like the double DRS zones. If Formula 1 had faith in the product, they wouldn't need them, because you'd think, oh, they can get the move done down to turn 1, but turn 1's not really an overtaking point anyway, neither's turn 2, obviously. That's much more follow-on from the first corner. So I can see why they've gone for it, but I still think if someone manages to get the move done into turn 1, just put another DRS detection point there. If they're still behind, great, they'll get it again. And if they've got ahead, to drive it behind, will have a chance to fight back. But I don't know, that's a personal gripe for me. Let me know if you guys agree with that, actually, because that's something that sort of does really bug me about DRS zones. When you see a driver get the move done, and then they get another burst of DRS, and you know there's not going to be a fight back, you feel a little bit robbed almost. But of course, what's quite interesting is because there's no DRS detection zone here, but this means that on lap 3, once DRS is enabled, we actually won't get any of it until right at the top end of the track, about halfway through the lap. So that will definitely draw out the field a little bit, and I think it will kill any chance of major DRS trains. Obviously, if we had this one going straight from the safety car restart or the race start, then obviously you're going to probably end up with DRS train, because it just means that drivers can stay that little bit closer if they've made a mistake through turn 1 and 2. But I think this way sort of works because it does stop the whole race just becoming a complete DRS train. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's something that Formula 1, I think, would want to avoid. But there we go. What do you guys make of the changes? I'll have a YouTube short with some pictures of all the track changes coming out tomorrow. That's something we're trying out on the channel. If you haven't seen the YouTube shorts, take a look at them. Let me know what you think. And also, while you're here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out, and we are still so close to 10k subs. If we could hit that, that would be absolutely insane. But as ever, until next time, goodbye.